The wonderful world of webinars, right? In this video today, I'm going to talk about the 4 different types of webinar, just to clear up any confusion you may have about the terminology, the industry jargon. Gives you just a simple, broad understanding of the 4 different types of webinar presentations you can use to sell your product in your sales funnel. And hopefully by the end of this video, you'll be able to use the information to choose a type of webinar that's appropriate to you and your business, your product, all right? Because I was speaking to a client on a call yesterday, and I used the term Evergreen webinar, or specifically Evergreen on demand, and she was like, what does that mean? So I kind of ran through the 4 different types of webinar, gave it the definitions and how they could fit into a funnel, and I thought it'd be a really useful video that I could record for you today. Now, we'll probably start at the beginning, where it's essentially like what is a webinar, and what's the point of having a webinar in your sales funnel? A webinar, as you probably well know, is essentially an online seminar. It's just a presentation on a topic where you're typically solving a single pressing problem for your customers. It's a great way to build the know, like, and trust factor. You know, typically you might be appearing on camera, as I'm doing now, or even if you're off camera, even if you're just presenting a slide deck. The people who've attended, they can hear your voice, they can hear you speak for 45 minutes, an hour, 90 minutes. So it's a great way to just kind of build that know, like, and trust factor with your audience. And if you're going to use a webinar as a sales vehicle, typically you'll deliver, about 70 to 75% of the presentation will be pure content, where you're really trying to help solve someone's problem. You're diving quite deep into it. And then usually for the last quarter, on the back end of a webinar, that's where you make your sales pitch. And of course, there's an art to the segue and how you do it. But there are 4 different types of webinar. We'll start with the first one, Evergreen, all right? So as the name probably suggests, an Evergreen webinar is something that can be used repeatedly, all right? It's something that won't go out of date or won't go out of fashion next week or next month. You might be able to use it a year from now, 2 years from now in an automated sales funnel. And the best way to make your webinar presentations evergreen is to avoid talking about anything topical, avoid kind of bringing in news hooks, pop culture references that mean something now but don't mean something in the next year, or whether the problem you're trying to solve is like a trendy problem. If it's a problem that your prospects are in all likelihood not going to be experiencing a year or 2 from now, then it's certainly not conducive to an evergreen webinar, right? So just to recap, summarize, an evergreen webinar is something that you can use to sell your product time and time and time again without it feeling dated, all right? Now then, a live webinar, like this is probably the easiest one to understand. It's where you present the webinar live. You invite people to register. You'll typically set up a landing page, a registration page. People will sign up to attend the webinar. It's an event that they're driven to. You'll send emails to remind them of when the webinar is happening, and then you present it live, okay? And people can typically pop questions into the chat, and you might have a Q&A at the end where you answer those questions live on the call. Obviously, this is a great way to build rapport with your audience, and it's a great way for you to perfect your pitch. So if you're delivering a lot of live webinars, you're used to that kind of back and forth with your audience. You're getting used to the questions they ask. You're getting used to you're discovering what they want from you in a presentation. So if you get really good at running live webinars, you'll be able to create recorded webinars where you're kind of skipping that step of the live audience, and you'll be able to have that down pat because you've really kind of honed your chops by doing a live webinar. So that was webinar number 2. Webinar number 3, all right, on demand. This is where you take a recorded webinar. Now, this could be one that you have recorded live with an audience, or one where, it's like I'm doing now, where you just kind of talk to the camera. Maybe you've got a slide deck presentation, you record it, so you've got this video file. And with an on-demand webinar, it's in an automated funnel, but you would release it periodically. So this would be periodic launches, and these could, it could be like 3 times a week. You could say, sign up here. This webinar goes live at 2 p.m. every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So it kind of develops a sense of scarcity. If it's only available, you might only make it available once a week. This webinar only goes live every Wednesday. So it's kind of drumming up, I suppose you could say, an almost false sense of scarcity, but it's a great way of getting people off the fence. It's a great way of getting people to take action. If the webinar's kind of sat there on your website all the time, people might not feel as inclined to click and watch it. So it's a great way of kind of bringing that exciting launch atmosphere back into your webinar, even though it's pre-recorded. And then the 4th type of webinar is automated. All right, so this is one typically that might sit on your website or in your funnel forevermore. You might be constantly driving people there with emails. It's there to be accessed whenever people like it. You could use an automated webinar as essentially as like a lead magnet, as a way of attracting people onto your list in the first place. Needless to say, evergreen webinars make great automated webinars because they're timeless. They can just sit there all the time, making money for your business 24/7. All right. So those are the 4 types of webinar. Hopefully, having given you an overview of this, you'll be able to decide whether which one of these would be useful for your business, and which one would fit your product model best to drive the most sales.